My guest today is Cara Macklin. Cara is an award-winning businesswoman, entrepreneur, and success coach specializing in innovative thinking, developing a powerful mindset, and creating meaningful change. Both an entrepreneur and a coach, Cara's journey began at 5 years old, growing up in her family business, where her education started around the kitchen table. She started her first business at age 15 and spent more than 15 years as a director in the family business, an award-winning healthcare and hospitality group that grew from 3 businesses with 250 employees to 7 businesses and 600 employees. In 2018, Cara disrupted the elderly healthcare industry in Northern Ireland by creating the very first lifestyle care home that was cited by the Institute of Directors chairman as a, quote, world-class concept. So now, with a burning desire to help dynamic entrepreneurs, Cara runs her own business called Carum. She helps entrepreneurs grow and create greater success with a unique blend of her business acumen and mindset coaching to think innovatively, act courageously, develop a powerful mindset, and create meaningful change. Wow. Cara, welcome to the Go for Launch podcast.
Thank you, Brandon. Lovely to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we're speaking on opposite ends of the world today. So tell our listeners where you are.
So right now I'm in my house in Northern Ireland in Belfast.
All right. Excellent. I was looking on the map and talking to you before the show about how it looks so lovely, and in Belfast, you guys have the Titanic Museum. So I would love to go there and see that sometime.
You'll have to come. Yes, we're very lucky. The city is amazing and we've lots to celebrate now here.
Excellent. Well, I don't think I realized that was where the ship was built many years ago. So obviously a fascinating journey from where it came from. So let's talk about you, though. You're the spotlight for today. Tell us about your early days as an entrepreneur and sort of how you've evolved in your career.
As you said, I grew up in a family business in Northern Ireland. So I always say my education in entrepreneurship started around a kitchen table, as most family businesses. And I remember at 8 or 9 years old in primary school being asked what did I want to do when I grew up, and I said I want to own Tammy Girl, and that was a teenage fashion store, a chain of fashion stores actually in the UK at the time. So that was a very unusual thing for an 8-year-old child in the countryside in Northern Ireland to say. So I always knew I wanted to run my own business, and then at 15, yes, you said, I had an idea at school with my brother that we would organise buses to local nightclubs because we lived in the countryside. So the only way to get us and our friends out, we didn't drive until we were 17. So that was pretty successful for a few years in school and made us nice income. And then I went on, as you've said, to do some other things in terms of I was in London and I worked in the family business as well. So
I also saw, Cara, that you had worked at one time for a very renowned hotel, I guess, in Belfast called the Malone Lodge, which obviously looks gorgeous as well. I was curious, especially from your experience in the hospitality industry, what were some of the biggest leadership lessons you learned from that?
So the Malone Lodge is my parents' hotel. So,
Okay.
Hospitality is in my DNA as a child. I think anybody that works in hospitality genuinely could work anywhere. We're now in an environment where the speed of change, things happen overnight. You have to adapt very quickly. That is the world of hospitality. Something goes wrong and you're on stage all the time. So you don't have a rehearsal. Clients are there, customers are in your rooms, they're in your dining room. The work ethic, you work very hard. The people skills as well, you get to learn how to interact. For me, one of the most important things in business is relationships and people. And hospitality teaches you that very quickly, to be able to work with people and the teamwork. It's a very fast-paced environment, and unless everyone in the teams work very, very well together, it literally, falls apart instantly. So that was a huge learning in managing teams and working with them.
Sure. I think everybody should work in hospitality at some level, just to understand, particularly the stress of customer service, right? Talk about that, when you have the lowest employee, who's somebody who's pushing the brooms, cleaning the rooms and stuff. A lot of times they're making a minimum wage. They're not making a lot of money. They're disgruntled. How did you help elevate their thinking to make sure that they understood that they were part of the whole system, making the customer happy?
Sure. I mean, you're right. Customer service is the most important thing in any hotel, and it's instant. You don't get time to sit in an office and think about getting it right. We were close to a university, so a lot of our staff, say waiters or waitresses, came from the university. So they were only there for a few years. And for me, it's really important that, you cannot guarantee to pay these people a lot of money. That's just the sector. So you have to recruit the right people. So, I would have instigated a lot of work around, where we won a lot of awards for, actually, around our culture, our recruitment, our training. You have to invest heavily in these people and train them properly. Because I think sometimes in the hospitality industry, that's what doesn't happen. If you look after them well, it's, all the add-ons are important, but it's very basic. You need to look after people in terms of thanking them, good leadership on the floor, working with them, thinking about their personal life if they've got exams at certain times of the year, and really including them in the success. I have 2 young people working in my business now. One of them's a student, and again, they're amazing. But it's a team. We are achieving the success together in the business. We can't run a hotel successfully without all the staff doing their job, and everyone is as important. And actually, the staff on the floor with the customers, in my opinion, are the most important people. They're more important than the leader or the manager, because they are the ones who are interacting with the customers.
Do you recall any of those people that were on the front lines in your past that rose above, and then you knew almost in hindsight that they were going to become more of a leader because they took the job seriously even at the time that they were working the front desk or whatever?
Sure. You can see, and there's phenomenal staff. I always say one of the mistakes businesses make is they have phenomenal people who are doing jobs, and they automatically put them into leadership roles. And that's not always the right thing. Great people. We had phenomenal employees, and I've had in my life, who are phenomenal at what they do, and that's what they love doing. But yes, I think you can. I certainly would have, in my whole career, been able to identify leaders pretty quickly. And then you understand, okay, this is potential here, and you do and work on different things with those people and elevate them. But you need to give everyone, I always say, recruit good, smart people, train them well, and let them do the job properly. You have to give these people freedom. They have a good mind, a good brain, and they will do a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also conversely, what I've also seen in my experience, and maybe you can echo this as well, sometimes people are quiet and they're just doing the job, but maybe they're unhappy. And with a little bit of encouragement, you can say, you know what, I feel like you can do better. And you can go from cleaning rooms to actually doing more if you just put your mindset to it. I think with a little encouragement, has that been the case for you, Cara, where you've given somebody encouragement and then all of a sudden seen a dramatic change where they rise above?
Massively. And I suppose I haven't had that many people who I needed to encourage from a negative point of view, but all of us have good days and bad, and we all need, a bit of a lift. But I would have identified leaders early on who didn't believe they could do it themselves. So 4 or 5 of our top managers in the family business now would have started with me across the healthcare or the hospitality side, and giving them belief, like that care home that I opened, which won loads of awards and everything when we opened it and disrupted an industry. That was the team. I promoted 9 of the staff. The manager of that, she was on media, she was on TV, she was live on radio being interviewed, and she was in her late 20s. That would not be normal. And she said to me, I would never have done that without you, Cara, and the encouragement that you had in me. So
I love that. And I think a lot more entrepreneurs, especially business owners, really need to think about that. A lot of times we're moving quickly, we're worrying about bigger picture issues, and we're not paying attention to the people on the front lines doing the work. And what I've seen also happen is that some of those quiet people that are just doing their jobs, they're formulating, you know what, I think I can do this better, and I'm going to leave and do this on my own. I've seen that in my own case. I've had employees work for me who left and started competing businesses, and I never saw that coming in some cases, because I was just thinking, well, they're doing a great job, why would they leave? But if you don't have those conversations, you never understand that people are maybe disgruntled. In some cases, maybe it's best to encourage them to leave. What do you think about that?
Yes. Yes, no, there's times where it's, it gets to a point and it's not right for either party. So, it's not just a nice stuff that has to be done. Hard decisions have to be made at times for a business and for the people. And it definitely, I would agree with you, at times people have to part ways for both parties. But I do think, entrepreneurship is very difficult in terms of the speed things go, and it's hard to keep all of these things going. But I will always say to my leaders that work for me, your job is to go onto the floor, because that was the business at the time, and find things that people are doing well. Because our automatic default for all of us as leaders is we're always looking for things going wrong because we want to fix them, and we don't like, very driven entrepreneurs don't like anything to go wrong. And it's not a soft, fluffy, oh, you're just saying things for the sake of it. But the more you encourage that culture, the more other staff see, oh, that's what they mean about right behaviours, or that's what they mean about coming up with ideas, or that's the way they want to do. So it's nearly the reverse engineering of, constantly saying things aren't right. So that would be important for me.
Definitely. When it comes to entrepreneurship, Cara, I'm curious, do you subscribe to the theory that entrepreneurs are born that way? You obviously were born into a family where you had entrepreneurs around you at an early age, so that was the norm. But a lot of people aren't, like myself, was not born around a bunch of entrepreneurs. So do you think people are born that way, or do you think people can be taught to become and encouraged to become an entrepreneur?
I know I don't normally sit in the fence in any questions, but I'm going to give you two sides of this coin that I believe. It's hard for me to answer because I was born into it, and was it in my DNA or was it in the environment I grew up in? I'm not sure. I do believe there's lots of people who are entrepreneurs in their DNA, but actually the other way, they've grown up in a house where, depending on what age they are, their parents were in jobs that were safe, and it goes down the generations. You stay in a safe job, you get a good salary, and that will keep you happy and safe, and a mortgage. So I think there's lots of people who could be entrepreneurs that aren't. But I do think, I always say I love what the world of technology and the disruption, and if we pick Mark Zuckerberg for an example, has done. He's disrupted the perception of what an entrepreneur should be. My only worry of that is young people look at that and think, oh, you wear a hoodie and skinny jeans and you hang out in a dorm room and then you've got this unicorn business. And that's my worry. That, you know better than me, that is not the life of an entrepreneur. People need to understand the risks, sleepless nights, the up and down 10 times in one day. It's not stable. But then I say, what is stable anymore? Look what's happened to us now. So I do think, anybody can do it, but they have to understand what they're getting into. So that's...
I appreciate your perspective a lot on that. And honestly, one of my missions, and it sounds like it's yours as well, is to encourage people that it's possible, right? Because like you said, for many decades, most people have subscribed that, yes, you're supposed to do it a certain way. Go to school, get the degree, go to university, get an advanced degree, go get a job, work the job, multiple jobs, but basically work for somebody to get that, quote, stability. That has been, disappearing rapidly and is going to continue to do so. I interviewed Mauro Gillen, who had just written a book, 2030, looking over the next 10 years. The job market is changing. So I think that people need to understand that you can't count on somebody else to take care of you. You need to be entrepreneurial, correct?
Definitely.
Yeah. And so,
but I even think, sorry, go ahead, Brandon.
No, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Even whether you're an entrepreneur running your own business, you need to have an entrepreneurial mindset. And this is maybe something we'll get onto, which is why I do the work I do. One of the things that, people need now more than ever is the ability to think creatively and innovatively and constantly new ways of doing things. That's in any business, that's in any job. And we are losing that skill as a society because we've so much knowledge, we've so much automation, we're just being told what to do, and actually we're getting lazy. If you think of children and how creative and imaginative they are, as we go through the system of school and right and wrong and corporate worlds, all that goes. People think entrepreneurs and visionary leaders just have this eureka moment and they have this superpower. They don't. They discipline themselves and they constantly work on it to come up with new ideas and keep moving forward. And so that's the bit. No matter whether you're an entrepreneur or a leader, in a business, you need to have that mindset from, going forward.
I'm glad you went there, because I was going to ask you, and how do you personally empower and encourage others to be more creative?
One very basic thing is you ask them for an idea. Lots of businesses think that, and staff do too, that the best ideas come out of the owners or the entrepreneur or the leaders. That is absolute rubbish, and that might be controversial. I would do a lot of work around, how you get people into the right frame of mind. We all know, if you ask 1,000 people, which I've asked, when do they get their best ideas? Out for a walk, in the shower, just about to fall asleep. And this goes into, I suppose, the mindset and the neuroscience stuff I do. When our mind is busy, which it is in work, you do not come up with good ideas. So when your mind and subconscious starts to slow down, that's when the best ideas come. So you need to get your staff and create an environment that you can get them into that relaxed state. One of the other challenges of creativity and thinking differently is people's expertise. So actually, the more expertise you have in a subject, the more dangerous it is that you can't think differently, because you're deep and deep. So I create ways to get people out of that, because even if you're, there's someone in a completely different industry is going to disrupt your industry right now, anybody, and you don't even see them coming. So I would bring different people together, completely different industries. I bring, I would always say leaders, they need to have coaches and mentors who are not from the same industry. They need to be in groups of people. If you stay in the same group, stay in the same town, stay in the same industry, we all know it, it's groupthink. And you'll not see.
I love that, because you're right. It's always refreshing. But a lot of people have this just sort of blinders on, thinking, well, I work in technology. What could somebody from healthcare or hospitality possibly tell me that I don't already know about technology? Well, to your point, they could be doing something different and innovative in terms of managing their human capital, for example, or just how they view growth or whatever, that suddenly makes you think, wow, we've been stuck doing it in a rut a certain way. We can do it differently. A lot of people turn to, say, the military, for example. Call it what you will, the military complex, but they have developed this, systems of being able to get things done, for example, and be very precise and have processes in place. And a lot of industry, a lot of startups maybe don't understand the value of having processes in place, right? When I started a firm early on doing web design, it was 4 guys in a room with computers. We were just heads down doing work, just going crazy. And it took us a while to figure out, we need to systematize this thing. We just can't constantly reinvent the wheel every project. It's not going to be profitable. It's not going to be predictable. And so we had to start looking for that systems thinking to apply to our business that actually made us better, not more restrictive, but more freer to do better work, because we weren't having to worry about what are the steps. We know the steps now. How can we do it faster, more reliably, et cetera? What do you think? What do you think the secret is of bringing those different parties together?
You need someone to facilitate them. You need people who are very open-minded. So I only work with leaders and entrepreneurs who are open-minded to doing different things. So that's key. And you need to ask, powerful questions, in my opinion, are more important today. We've more answers and more knowledge than we ever had in the world. In terms of the systems, I would agree with you. I mean, when you say processes and systems to any entrepreneur, they feel sick already. It's like a complete switch off, as you know. But unless you get some discipline and accountability into your business, and what I always see is there's a direct correlation between the entrepreneur themselves and the business. So when I meet entrepreneurs and they'll say to me, oh, Cara, I'm not organized and I need someone to hold me to account, I can, without even getting into the business, I can see that. Or they, very often they try to do 20 projects and don't finish any one of them off. So, any leader, and again, this is probably controversial, but what you're seeing in your business today that you might not be happy with, my experience is when I start to work with leaders, it's a reflection of how they're behaving or what's holding them back as well.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the coaching profession for a moment because, to be honest, there seems to be a million people that call themselves a coach these days, right? I see digital marketing coaches. You probably see business and mindset coaches, etc. Tell us what distinguishes somebody from just hanging out a shingle saying, I'm a coach, from the real professionals.
The first thing I always say to people is you need to understand what type of coach you want. So it's a very young profession. So if you go to a doctor, you go to a heart surgeon to fix your heart, you go to a dentist to fix your teeth. So you need to understand what the problem is first before you go to look for a coach. If I zone it down specifically to the work I do, where I would be different and where clients come to me is, one is I have the experience of being an entrepreneur. I've been through all the highs and lows. I mean, you very kindly read out my story, but I mean, I've burnt out very badly on a number of occasions. I've made huge mistakes early on in my 20s managing staff. There's not a mistake I haven't made in terms of my clients I work with, and I can tell them, look, this is what happened to me. So that's the first thing. Does someone have the experience and have they been through it as well? The other part that's very important is, how are they trained? There is professional training for coaches. So asking them, and like any profession, what kind of investment are they putting in themselves? What kind of development? I mean, I continue to have my own coaches, always have had. I have a business coach and a business mentor, and a coach, and I continue to invest continuously in my own development, and because I can't be the best for my clients if I'm not continually, and there's nothing I teach them that I haven't done myself, or I haven't been through myself, or hasn't created the success that I've had. So that would be a big difference for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure it's the same in Northern Ireland as it is in the U.S. I always tell people, look at professional athletes, for example. You don't see one professional athlete doesn't have multiple coaches, and even as big as their egos are, they're not going to show up to work and say, get away from me. I don't need anybody to tell me what to do. I'm good. Don't try to coach me. They're actively the smartest people, whether it's Michael Jordan or the best soccer player in Ireland or whatever, they're going to have somebody because they want the feedback and they know that they can always get slightly better. It may be a slight improvement, right, for Beckham or somebody, right? But that slight improvement for him or somebody like Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan is going to be so much better than the average person. But that's going to take an outside perspective from a coach who is specialized, like you were saying, to be able to identify their weaknesses and help them work on those.
I mean, I wrote a post on social media recently about Richard Branson and Oprah Winfrey. They both talk openly about the coaches they've had, the success, and it's the 1% all the time. These people know, good to great stuff. If I want to be the best in the world, I need to surround myself with people who are like that, and people who are going to help me and accelerate the success I'm going to get. And that's what a coach brings.
You mentioned two of my idols, Richard Branson and Oprah. Who doesn't love those two, right? But are there any others that come to mind? I mean, Richard Branson is probably a great example, Cara, for your sort of amalgam of different stuff. The guy starts with Virgin Records, right? He's this long-haired hippie dude who was like big into the music industry. It started an airline, which was a crazy story. He couldn't get a flight, leased an airplane on the spot, just ridiculous. But then I think what he did, to your point, was he took the entertainment mindset, like let's have fun, and apply it to a boring industry, which at that time was air travel, right? Is that a good example for you?
Massively. I mean, I've idolized him from I was a child. Again, that's something you shouldn't admit. Most people have boy bands on their wall. He was my icon. Not the way he looked, but yes. And I mean, that kind of mindset, that's how I think it's, there's no option in terms of we keep doing it the same way. There's always different ways to do it, better ways. And that's where a perfect example of how you amalgamate two industries, or, again, one of the techniques I teach people is collaboration. So who can you collaborate with? 1 + 1 is 2, 5 × 5 is 25 type stuff. So actually that was in that lifestyle care home that I created. We brought, so obviously the hospitality background I have integrated into it, and the kind of people I brought around the table as outsiders. So we brought a managing director of one of the top 5-star hotels in Ireland was on our team. We had a guy who was really high-end car sales, showroom like Mercedes, Ferrari. we had, trying to think the other, so we had 4 or 5 people who were from a completely different industry. And that was absolutely fundamental to changing that landscape and creating something very different. Because again, the more people you put into the room who think the same, the more of the same you're going to get.
How do you also get people out of the fear mindset? Because especially, let's go back to that example of somebody working for you at a hotel years ago that maybe was cleaning rooms, came to you and said, I have an idea, Cara, for a way to do this differently. If that person gets shot down, a lot of times they'll just think, oh, well, that's what I was expecting. The boss doesn't like my ideas, thinks I'm stupid, so I might as well just keep my mouth shut. How do you encourage or teach people to not just have those types of snap judgments, encourage good ideas wherever they come from within the organization, and actually give those people some props and say, you know what, that we can't do that idea, but you're on the right track. Keep going and come back to me with some other ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it's that simple. You have to listen, properly listen, first of all, and you have to encourage. And, you know, people say to me, there's no such thing as a bad idea. In reality, there is, in terms of it might not be the right idea for right now. But something that someone says that could be absolutely crazy sparks something that someone else is. And sometimes it just creates something really magical. You know, leaders, it's that simple. You cannot say no, but you need to say yes and. Okay. And, you know, I always say to my team, okay, if you own this business, what would you do? Yeah, so that's the line I
a lot
all
of
the
people,
time with.
Right. People look at the leader in the case like that, and often with like a deer in the headlights going, what do you mean?
No, initially they will. They are scared. Yeah. So,
yeah.
So even you have to do it very softly and slowly, because if you ask, as you rightly said, someone sweeping the floor just out of nowhere, like if you own this place, what would you do? They're scared. They're thinking back to what I said about school and corporate world. This is a right or wrong answer. This is a trick question. So you have to create an environment where those people can feel free, and that takes time, building relationships, and as you say, definitely not shoot them down, because if you shoot them down, you're never getting another idea from them.
Exactly. Let's talk about your new business. It's called Karam or Karam. Am I pronouncing that right? How do you say it?
Karam.
Karam.
Karam
right.
is fine.
It's your first name, last initial. So I love that. So in addition to the massive pandemic affecting the entire world, what other issues are you facing? Because you're a new entrepreneur again.
Yes, so I left the family business last year to set up my own coaching business. And look, the pandemic hasn't really affected me that much, but I'm no different to any startup. Cash flow is very important. Getting your first few clients, you know, so this is the first time I've completely started a business with no one and no support around me. So a huge learning curve in terms of, you know, all the things you have to do in a business on your own. I mean, I have a team now with me, but the frustration of not being able to do things quickly enough, that was probably the hardest part at the beginning.
Definitely. Well, tell us about the types of coaching you're providing and the clientele that you're looking for.
Sure. So my passion is entrepreneurs. So it's why I set up Karam, and it's those entrepreneurs who really want to, you know, there's a fire in their belly in terms of doing things differently, making a real impact, you know, pushing boundaries, because I always say being an entrepreneur is hard enough. Then taking on to push boundaries and do things in addition to that makes it a lot harder. And that's where, you know, when I was doing that in terms of the innovation and the growth in our business, having a coach, a really good coach alongside you, because, you know, I know many entrepreneurs who have given up on great ideas because they just give up, you know, they burnt out. Or so the first piece, so it's that kind of mindset. And the first piece I work with them on is creative thinking and innovation, and teach what I have done to make it easier for them to do it. And the other parts then is success mindset, or powerful mindset. So for me, you need to develop, and, you know, it's like the sports people. People think there's certain people who are strong and there's certain people who aren't. That strength in your mind comes from discipline and practice. It's like a muscle in your body. So there's a lot of, you know, psychological techniques, neuroscience that I use with clients to help them build that strength. And then the last part is inspiring. How do you inspire other people with you on the journey? I find a lot of entrepreneurs, and me being one of them, we're 100 miles ahead of everyone else, the speed we go at, and we've left everyone behind us, and the gap is too big in terms of communication, and your team or your stakeholders or your banks can't understand the vision that you have in your head. So it's working with those entrepreneurs to help them articulate, because unless they can articulate the story and bring, because all you're doing when you're trying to create something new, the only way you can motivate and bring people along with you is to connect with their hearts and minds, because you have nothing physical to show them. So they have to believe in your story, your journey, and what you're trying to achieve. And that's, so I work with people on that as well.
Those are all brilliant concepts, and thank you so much for sharing. Where can people learn more about you and Cara?
So the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, just at Cara Macklin. And if anyone wants to just direct message me and put Brandon Utley in the title, I'm happy to send out videos that I can share with some of your listeners in terms of the techniques I use, and if it could be useful to some of your listeners in terms of their learning or development.
Excellent. Well, everything that she just mentioned will also be over on the show notes page at goforlaunch.io/show 101. So, Cara, thank you so much. We've been speaking to Cara Macklin of Cara in Northern Ireland. Love your accent, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you.